The race is on and it's a sprint. We're going to the polls in 6 weeks' time. Rishi Sunak has finally announced the date of the election, ending months of speculation over when this year's vote will be held. In the pouring rain, the Prime Minister addressed the nation from outside Number 10. Now, over the coming days, party leaders will battle for votes and the keys to Downing Street. Here's a flavour of what he had to say.
Now is the moment for Britain to choose its future. To decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty. Now, I cannot and will not claim that we have got everything right. No government should. But I am proud of what we have achieved together, the bold actions we have taken, and I'm confident about what we can do in the future. On the 5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister. He has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises he made to become Labour leader once he got the job, how can you know that he won't do exactly the same thing if he were to become Prime Minister?
So how will it play out and what will the deciding issues be? On the day he set out his government's priorities, we were joined by First Minister and SNP leader John Swinney to discuss his UK election hopes. A general election has been called, and this comes at a really bad time for the SNP, doesn't it? Polls are suggesting you're going to lose a lot of seats.
We've got to make sure that the SNP's in place for the election. We've got a strong message. I want to set out the arguments why people should vote SNP. We've got a combination of Westminster austerity, we've got Brexit, we've got the implications of the cost of living crisis. All three of these major factors that affect the lives of people in Scotland are a product of Westminster, and we've got to make sure that people come out to vote SNP to protect Scotland from the damage that's been done to our country by the Westminster system.
The SNP policy is that if you get a majority of seats, that's 29, that would be a mandate for independence. Is that still your policy?
That's the policy position of the SNP, and what I want to do in this election is engage voters about the importance and the urgency of ensuring that we address the damage that Westminster is doing to Scotland. Austerity, Brexit and the cost of living crisis are all the product of Westminster mismanagement. Why should we in Scotland put up with Westminster mismanagement when we could determine our own future as an independent country?
But to get back to the policy, it could be that you get fewer seats than you have at the moment, which is 43, and you still think that's a mandate, but is that not a diminished mandate?
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this election to maximise the SNP vote and maximise the number of seats the SNP can win in this election. That will be the focus of all that I do in this election campaign, to make sure the SNP returns the strongest possible group to Westminster, and that group is able to set out the protection that we can deliver for Scotland and that we can achieve Scottish independence as a consequence of voting SNP in this election.
But the big issue is that, you know, even if you get the amount of seats that you think fulfills your mandate, how do you then deliver independence? What's your mechanism to deliver it?
Well, the key thing is that we've got to maximise support for the SNP, because Scotland's never going to become independent unless the SNP is strong. And if people in Scotland want our country to have a different future, which is a future that's not lumbered with austerity, not lumbered with Brexit that we didn't vote for, not lumbered with a cost of living crisis that's a product of Westminster mismanagement, we've got to maximise the SNP vote to give us the greatest chance of succeeding.
Sure, but don't you think the voters will want to know how you intend to deliver that?
Well, what I think voters want to hear from me is an alternative to the continuation of the damage that Westminster is doing to Scotland. That's what voters want to hear. They want an alternative agenda. And the alternative for Scotland is to take control of our own affairs and to make sure that we don't have decisions taken that are against our interests.
I understand that, but you're asking people to vote for independence, but you're not making it clear how you will deliver that. The Supreme Court has already made it clear that Westminster has the final say on referendums, and both the Tories and Labour say there will be no referendum. So where does that leave you?
Well, we've got a democratic argument here, Rona, and people are going to the polls to have the opportunity to express their democratic voice. And I want them to express powerfully and emphatically through the ballot box by voting SNP that they want our country to have a different future as an independent country, and no Westminster government can stand in the way of the democratic wishes of the people of Scotland.
Hamza Yousaf said independence would be page 1, line 1 of your manifesto. Is that going to be the same under your leadership?
Yes.
It is. OK, you won 48 seats at the last election. You're now currently on 43. How many do you think you can win this time?
I'm going into this election to win the most seats I possibly can do for the SNP. We've got great candidates the length and breadth of the country, and we're going to make sure we do that.
First Minister, thank you very much indeed.